Sent me a message and asked if I'd be willing to give a toast or a speech. I told him I'd be honored to do that. But do you want me to give a speech or give a toast? He was like, they're pretty much the same thing, aren't they? So do whatever you want. So you're either going to get a very short speech or an extended toast, whichever way you want. So, for those of you that don't know me, and that's most of you, I'm Dwayne Dunlap. I had the privilege of meeting Collin when he was about 12 or 13 years old, something like that. He was playing on the same soccer team as my son was. And so, for those of you that didn't have the privilege of knowing Collin back then, I describe him as a special child. Okay? Remember, you asked for this, Collin. So, at that point, my wife and I were raising two boys, and we thought we knew what loud and crazy were. But Collin took it to a new level. Okay? I'm not talking just loud. I'm talking like a room full of screaming middle school girls. Okay? And crazy, he was somewhere on the scale between Johnny Knoxville and certifiably crazy. Right? He never saw a cliff that he didn't want to climb up and jump off of. He never saw a hurricane-filled raging creek that he didn't want to get in a canoe and go down. And he thought the speed limit signs were the minimum speed. But as the years went by, even though all these boys that were on that soccer team went to different high schools, they started to form a special bond. Okay? This wasn't your typical group of boys. You know, they got into a little mischief every once in a while, but they were always together. They were there to support each other in good times and also some of the toughest times that teenagers could go through. And so since my son was part of this group, Collin kept hanging around and hanging around. Right? So much so that he began to go on vacation with us. My family would go to Smith Mountain Lake for 10 days or 2 weeks every summer. And for some reason, the 4 adults that were there decided it would be a good idea to take 10 or 12 teenage boys along with us. Like, yeah. Not good. They had a good time. They would go tubing, they'd water ski, they'd go cliff jumping, and of course they would eat. Anybody ever tried to feed 10 teenage boys? It took us 2 pickup trucks full of food, and sometimes we had to load up the boat with food to go down there. And so you can imagine things got a little crazy. But, you know, sometimes in the craziest of times is when God finds a way to speak to you in the most profound way. And it was here at the lake, amongst all that craziness, that Collin and I's relationship began to grow and really develop. The particular night I'm talking about, we were all sitting on the porch, talking, laughing, and all of a sudden, Collin sits up and says, I have a question for you. He said, what's it mean to be God-fearing? I thought about it for a moment before I answered. But you know, that simple question turned into about a 4-hour conversation on our beliefs, our faith, and our relationship with Christ. And it may have started before then, but after that summer, I really began to notice some changes in Collin. Not only was he growing as a young man, but he was also growing in his faith. And so also after that summer, he started coming around our house more often. He would come over to watch the Capitals play hockey. The Caps. You okay? we would go to the gym together. He'd come over and play games. And by the way, Sydney, this is your warning if you didn't know. He thinks cards and board games are a full contact sport. And sometimes he would just come over and hang out. And most nights when he was over there, the rest of my family would go to bed at some point. And it would just be me and Collin sitting on the couch. We'd talk, and we'd talk. We'd talk whatever game was on we were watching. We'd talk about future plans, what his dreams were. And we talked about the Bible. But one of those nights, he brought up something new. He brought up this girl, Sydney, and how she was so full of life, and how she was awesome. And I don't really know how to explain it, but every time we talked about Sydney, something changed in him. And I could tell that he genuinely cared for her. It took us a while for us to finally get the chance to meet her. But when we finally did, we unanimously agreed that Collin was right. She was awesome. She was perfect, and they were perfect for each other. I like to think that God had a plan for these two a long time ago. And God was able to remove that craziness and recklessness that Collin had in his heart to allow room for Sydney and the love and compassion that he has for her. And so, before we raise our glasses to the actual toast, I need to ask Sydney one question. You ready for this? When Collin was home this summer, me and him went to the gym an awful lot. And almost every time that we met in front of the gym, he would say to me, I need to work on my honeymoon bra. And so I don't really know what that means. But did we do okay? Alright, so now, raise your glasses and gain a toast. Collin and Sydney, may the two of you always love each other. May you always chase your dreams. Fight for the relationship with the same craziness and courageousness that you had as a kid. And no matter where you go or what you do, always do it together. The two of you are now one in the eyes of the Lord. So not only are you in a new relationship with each other, but also with Him. And allow Him to continue His work within you. Pray together, grow your faith together, and allow Him to strengthen the bond between you. Collin and Sydney, here's to a lifetime of happiness and a wonderful marriage.
Cheers.